There's a really good book called The Like Switch. So it sounds like light switch, but like Like. And in that, they talk about how they teach 3-letter agency people when they walk into a room, walk in, raise your eyebrows, tilt your head and smile. And the reason for the raising of the eyebrows is because when any stranger enters a room, we subconsciously go back to our historic thinking of who is that person? Are they here to help me or harm me?
Is he a threat?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you raise up, it's recognition. When you squint down, it's foe. So friend, foe. So eyebrows up, friendly. Hey, like you recognize someone. Squinting, your foe. After they look at your eyes, they look at your hands. What's in your hands that can hurt me? So if you're standing and you don't know what to do with your hands and you're sitting with your hands in a fist, you look like you're ready to fight.
Yeah.
You know, you stick your hands in your pockets. What's in your pockets? You stick your hands behind your back. Why is it behind your back? What do you have? So that's why they teach people to do the steeple is yes, it can be natural over time like anything else. But if you're trying to do it to go, look at how smart I am, like an evil genius, that's bad.
Yeah.
But if you just do it in front, it's fine.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York's Middle Tennessee, it says here.
Right.
Sounds riveting.
Yep.
This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals.
Just mostly.
Mostly.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Matt Wilson from the Mostly Marketing Podcast. Offered his voice up to do my intro. If you listen to his podcast, you'll hear my voice on his intro. We just got to help each other up. We go back a ways to the 90s when we were both in radio together. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, where we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners, professionals, and entrepreneurs about all sorts of things. You know, pretty much just anything that's a meandering conversation, real conversations. You never know kind of where they'll go, but typically about the person and their background, challenges, successes, all that fun stuff. This is a video and audio podcast. You can watch us or listen to us, share it with your friends, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff at MMTBP.com. That's MMTBP.com. I am your host, Jim McCarthy with JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com, and it's your show.co, where you can get podcasts just like this one, even using the studio if you so chose. And today, it's very exciting. I've been in contact with this gentleman for probably about 8 months now, roughly, you know.
Yep.
And he's not from around here. He's from the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. So occasionally, just showing you that we'll go outside of Middle Tennessee if the guest deserves it. And I think this guest certainly does. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Brian Galke, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And right now, so if you're listening to this podcast and you're fascinated with people, like, you know, you run into somebody and you just know certain things about them by, well, you know, how their facial tics are, the directions that they're looking, their body language. I've always been fascinated with that stuff, and I know you're studying me right now, depending, and I have no idea what kind of a read I'm giving off, but, you know, this is what you do. You are a decoding, you decode facial features, among other things.
Yes.
With your business, Subtle Skills, at subtleskills.com.
Yes.
So this is what you do for a living. I mean, let's start from the beginning. Mm-hmm. How am I doing so far?
Oh, you're doing great. I'll tell you a tip right off the bat.
Sure.
Trim your mustache a little so we can see your upper lip. So if you notice, whenever I trim my beard and I shave it, I always make it so you can see my upper lip. And the reason for that is when we look at people, we say the phrase, hey, keep a stiff upper lip.
Interesting.
And we tell people that when we want them to be stoic. Don't be so emotional. You know, hey, you've got this. And that's based on people with flatter upper lips. It's kind of one
which
of those,
I have.
Which you have, but we can't see it. So your mustache actually hides it a little bit. So that keeps people at bay because it's like a barrier in between you and other people. So we know this, but we don't know it in that when we meet somebody who has a flatter upper lip, we kind of know to stay away until they open up. And the reason we know that's because that phrase I just gave you, hey, keep a stiff upper lip. Well,
I don't want to drive people away. I guess I got to, keep and it's funny because this morning I was going to trim my upper lip mustache. I've been growing back the top because my wife's been making fun of me because I've been doing, I guess, what you call the Tony Stark thing where you shave the top half.
Right.
And it's just like kind of a line. She's like, okay, Ricardo Montalban. So one of the ways and even with this hat that I got, I started wearing a scally here recently, and she goes, you did not order one of those. I said, I did, I just kind of wanted to try it out, and she wanted to make fun of me. Yeah. I get the hat in, I put it on. She goes, it actually kind of looks good on you.
You never know until you try, right? That's a funny thing. Sometimes something calls to you and you're like, I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And it works out well.
It does. So, well, good start. I mean, I agree with you because I don't like the hair on my lip.
Right.
You know, my wife doesn't either. She doesn't like it when I shave it. She likes it when I let it go long because then it doesn't hurt her when I kiss her.
It's not pokey. Right. I have a 7-year-old, so she's like, "Daddy, you're pokey."
Right. And it's like all my hairdressing friends, all my hairdressing. I have one. She says you got to condition the crap out of that thing because it softens the hair.
Oh, I didn't know that. So I'll have to add that to the rotation.
Yeah, or I do with a beard balm and stuff like that.
I have beard oil. It's funny because like to have dandruff and not have hair confuses people. And I wear black V-necks or a vest pretty much everywhere I go. I'm like Steve Jobs. I have the same outfit all the time. Yeah. And I'm always like, am I doing okay? Yep.
You got to do the check every now and then. You know, I worked with a guy in the car business who never did it. And he looked like, he was doing coke on the front of his shirt.
Like he ashed on himself with his cigarette. Just,
I'm like, dude, brush it off, man. That's kind of nasty.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I travel a lot for speaking gigs and things, and you dehydrate yourself, on a plane, don't drink enough water. And then I super flake. So I'm in the hotel just brushing like this, trying to get it out before, and then put the oil in.
Are you kind of like the same that I am when you do that? You're like, this is so disgusting. Why do I just? Because the thing is, though, I can't. If I shave the beard off, I look like a human thumb.
I'm Uncle Fester. Right. So there's a little bit of fear every time. So I take out the beard trimmer, right, and so I shave my head with it, the guard completely off.
But do you need to shave your head? Are you balding? Like
I was balding. So about 15, oh no, actually, gosh, it's closer to 17, 20 years ago. I was in a hotel in Delaware. I used to sell technology to jails and prisons. And we were in the state of Delaware. I was actually installing this in all these prisons. And the hotel I was in had a mirror in front of me and a mirror behind me. So every day when I brushed my teeth in the morning and at night, I'm like, that thing's getting kind of large. Yeah. It was thinning on the top. And I thought, screw it. When I get home, I'm shaving my head. And I did. And for the first month, here's what I realized. If you're going to shave your head, get a tan or go get tanning oil. Because people would walk up and go, cancer? I'm like, no, bald spot.
Make it even worse by wearing a bandana.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but I would never go back to having hair. So it's just one of those, yes, you have to shave it every other day. Yeah. But I just can't imagine having hair again.
I shaved it for a long time. Yeah. And I was kind of not the first in my age group to do it, but certainly one of the few. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, everywhere you look now, everyone's got a bald head. And I'm like, I'm just going to differentiate in this. I'm like growing out the Brian Johnson hair from AC/DC kind of thing. It's like, I just want to grow back a mullet and just let it. I've got, I kind of got my Jufro growing.
Let me, I'll show you when we get done with this. I was in Vegas speaking at an event, and there was a guy on Fremont Street that was there to watch they called themselves Spandex something, and they were all the 80s heavy metal bands. Yeah. And this guy had a full legit mullet. And I took a picture of him like, this guy is dedicated to his craft.
That's right. And he stands out,
Yeah. He's like Joe Dirte.
Yeah. But for me, it's like I look at it and I know I need a haircut. We're doing Jim's event tomorrow. Right. I look completely ragged. I haven't had time to go get a haircut. I'm just doing all the things. Yes. Right. And I'm like, I really don't. I just don't really care all that much anymore.
That's what happens with age, right?
Yeah, you just take me as I am. You know, and it's judge me by the words that fall out of my mouth. Yes, and try not to be too harsh. Yeah. So you started. You grew up in Texas, I would imagine.
Been there since I was 4.
Okay.
Yep. And so I'm 49 now. So 45 years in Texas.
Good year.
Yes. Yeah. And I love it there. 2 major airports, lots of things to do. Truthfully, if I didn't have a kiddo, I'd probably live in Scottsdale, Arizona, because I like hiking. I like the desert where it's cool in the morning and cool at night, and you just hide during the day. But I've got so many friends and family in Dallas that I don't see myself ever leaving it.
Right.
Yeah.
Although there was an opportunity for me to move to Dallas several times, because when I was in radio, once was with The Fish, 94.1, I think it's their frequency. I don't remember. And another one was with a buddy of mine's radio station, but it never panned out. We ended up moving here from Vegas. So we were, I'm a Southerner at heart. Yes. Grew up in the Northeast, and then we moved out to Vegas. It was fun for 4 years, but, you kind of get enough of it after a while. Yeah. So you went to school there and everything, college?
College, Texas Tech, which is 5 hours. Now it's 5 hours of nothingness to get back and forth, but it was kind of like Road Warrior because on every Friday, people would just hit the freeway and do like 90 to 100 to get back to Dallas. So it was 5 hours from civilization. We always knew somebody's going to get pulled over for speeding, but they can't get us all.
Yeah.
And so that's how I drive back and forth. Good school, just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Texas Tech is also a renowned music school.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Greg Bissonette went there, a lot of drummers. My buddy, who you're going to meet tonight and tomorrow, Rich Redmond,
Yes.
is a graduate.
I did not know that.
Yes.
See?
So
You learn real fast not to walk across campus with your mouth open because it's red dirt that just blows across
Really?
all the time. Yes.
now, did you have any musical interest going there?
I wish I can only play the radio. I tried musical instruments. Funny enough, I almost didn't graduate college when I did because of songwriting. And it was because I'm melodically tone deaf. I could write the lyrics and everything else. They're like, oh, and you have to play it on the piano. And I'm like, I don't understand the difference between the song. Like even when I would I'd go get extra credit with the teacher and he like play the music. I'm like, I don't hear the difference between a C and a D. And it just doesn't work for me that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Not being a drummer, you don't get into the tonality. I'm not sure if I could discern a C from a D either, but middle C, I think I can. My brother for sure can. He plays piano. So he's heard it all since he's 7 years old.
Yeah.
It's amazing talent to be able to pick out just basically a vibration and that's a D sharp.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my gosh, that's nuts.
We're pretty incredible as humans. I mean, you can go a totally different direction. Psalms, right? With wine, that they can sip it and go, oh, this is from the berry that's in the East African desert that grows once every 5 years.
Yeah.
The fact that we have these amazing senses that can pick up on things like that, it makes
crazy.
you wonder what we're not taught how to use.
Or you just gravitate naturally towards it.
Yes.
Like guys who can recall sports statistics with certain teams and certain players in certain years.
Yes.
Just minute details. And it's like, oh my gosh. But I think about it, I'm like, well, hey, when I grew up and I immersed myself in drummers and drumming, I could tell you what kind of, what size cymbal that Neil Peart played on this album and this placement and, how thin it was and blah. I knew all that stuff just because I just naturally absorbed it,
I'm like you. My friends all do fantasy football, and they're like, "You going to sign up this year?" I'm like, it would be like me going to the horse race and just picking the pretty name because I don't keep up. I don't know where they went to high school. I don't know where they went to college.
Sometimes that works.
Yes. Now, you give me tickets to an event, I will go to anything. I've been at major NBA finals when Dallas won in Miami. By fluke chance, we were there, and I talked our way into $1,000 seats. So you give me a ticket to go to anything, I'm your guy. Let's go. Let's have fun. I'm about the experience. But if you ask me who's playing and where they came from, I'm like, I like those people.
Yeah. I'm kind of getting like that now because my wife and I, well, I guess more so me, we've gotten into football, watching it a little bit more. We've enjoyed a lot of our time in our backyard watching it, having some hors d'oeuvres and whatever. And we'll watch the games and you start picking up on the players and the people and the coaches. Yes. What really got us interested are those shows that they're doing in real time where they're embedding the camera crew in with the team.
Yes.
So like preseason training camp with the Chicago Bears recently. I think it's on Amazon or Max, I want to say.
I think it's Max.
Yeah, they're both doing it though.
Yeah.
And that really got us endeared. Like she became a huge fan of Dan Campbell with the coach of the Lions.
Yeah.
And it's like, even when I watch the games now, I'll pull up DraftKings and it was a Lions game preseason. It was at home, and I'm like, if I know, they were down by like a touchdown and a half, 10 points or so, and I'm like, if I know Dan Campbell, he's not gonna lose this game.
Yeah.
And of course the odds were like 500 to 600 to 1, and I'm going, I'll put $50 on that.
Sure.
And they came back and won. I was like,
there you go.
Just by hunch.
Yeah.
Just by, knowing the guy and how he is invested in his team and wants to bring Detroit a playoff success and, a pennant and if not a Super Bowl, he's driven, and you can pick up on that.
You can. And so to go a different sport and back to NBA, I don't know why. But when Mark Cuban came to Dallas, it changed what Dallas thought about the Mavericks because people were interested in Cuban. Here was a guy that loved it so much when he was a bartender and bouncer and all these things that he did broadcast.com. Then when he sold that, he invested in the Mavs. He used to go and he would shake everyone's hand. If you had tickets to go to the VIP club afterwards, he walked around, shook everyone's hand, thanked them for being there.
Nice.
And then we have Jerry Jones, who you can't come within, 1,000 feet of because he's got security and he just sits kind of in a separate area.
Yeah.
But Mark Cuban is a man of the people. And it's with all these shows that you're talking about, like Amazon and Max and all those, we get behind the scenes. We get to feel like we know the people versus just paying to show up, watch them play and leave.
Yeah.
And that's so many things, Top Gear, all these other shows that now you can get behind it and understand like, Formula One racing. Now they've got all the shows that show you everything that's going on in the pits and, all season long before they get to the race. And it creates super fans because you get to really dive deep into all these different things.
True.
We live in an amazing time.
Yeah. It's even with social media, reaching out to people.
Oh, absolutely.
I've been putting the notion out there to have Dennis Quaid sit in the chair you're sitting.
Yeah.
And I just know it's going to happen someday. I've always had these hunches to know when things were going to happen.
Yes.
And I believe he's going to sit in that chair someday and we're going to have a conversation.
Yep.
I just start putting it out there and you never know who's going to listen, who's going to know him.
Right.
And say, hey, this guy's been talking about you. He's kind of weird.
Yes.
He feels like he knows you, and that's kind of a weird thing too. But hey, let's get you guys together. You never know what may happen with that kind of stuff.
You have to put it out there in order to receive it. 100% agree with that. And when we get those gut feelings, you can read all these different books, call them woo-woo or not. The consistent theme is people, athletes, Olympians, you name it, they visualize what they want and they make it happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done the same thing. I mean, I saw myself getting a job in Vegas when it was time in 2001 for me to move on from the radio station where I was. I just put that energy out there. I said, I'm moving on. It's time.
Yeah.
And I had an offer from Long Island and then an offer from Vegas. And I'm like, Vegas sounds fun.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And that's what we did.
I always said, this is before I got married and had a kid, but I thought it'd be fun to live 1 year in New York, 1 year in New Orleans, and 1 year in Vegas. Because I think if Europeans come over, anybody comes in, they're like, what should I see? I always say New York, New Orleans, and Vegas. Now I would add Nashville to that list wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because I'm here. I actually like coming to Nashville, but I don't remember Nashville being on my radar 10 years ago.
That's crazy for me. Me neither.
Yeah.
It came out of nowhere for us. We were 4 years in Vegas. I said, I want to get back to the East Coast, but not the Northeast where I was from.
Yeah.
I've always felt like Charlotte was a good destination, Atlanta, Raleigh, Durham. Where else? I think I looked at Memphis, but and then Nashville popped out of nowhere. There was a job posting on the trade website, and I'm going, how did I not think of Nashville?
Yeah.
Had a conversation. They flew me out here, treated me right. The rest is history.
Yeah. It's a great town. I got here Sunday night, and I just like walking. And when I hear a band I like, I walk inside and listen to them for a little bit. And then they get done. They do a band change. I walk to another venue. And it's really strange because in Dallas, we don't have a lot of live music.
That's crazy.
If you want to eat, drink, and shop, come to Dallas. But as far as live music, if you go to Fort Worth, where there's like Billy Bob's, that's a lot of music. Austin used to have a lot of music. Dallas is very rare.
Austin has no music or very little music now?
Well, they're starting to chase out musicians because it's so expensive to live in Austin that all the people who were trying to make it on the circuit have to go live in farther out towns. So now they're still in Austin, but it's not as prevalent as it once was.
Right.
Yeah.
I go to Houston a lot. Well, the Woodlands specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. Because one of my clients is down there. So
don't go in the summer. It's humid. It's bad humid.
I've been there in the summer. You just got to stay in the AC as much as you can.
Yes.
You wear shorts.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better, sound better, and, well, spring better. We just make them incredible again. Incredible Doors in Spring Hill. When your door's springs break, you need remote reconnections, opener installation, or just about anything to do with your garage door, go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, key pass, and other items. 931-348-DOOR.
So you went to college there and everything with Texas Tech.
Yeah.
What was the major?
I was Well, I started out as a PR major, and they lost their accreditation for Mass Comm right when I was going to graduate. So I went to my counselor. I'm like, well, what do I do? And they said, well, you can do communication studies. I'm like, well, what is that? And it ended up being awesome because it was classes like speaking, body language, you name it. It was all things I was curious because I'm an introvert by nature. And so it fed my need, but I never went that way because I always thought, when you tell people I'm a communication studies major, they're like, oh, that's sweet. You're special, Yeah. But it was some of the most interesting classes that I really, really loved. And I had a psychology minor. So they fed off of each other. And it's what made me happy. But I never was one of those that I thought I'm going to have a corporate job.
Right.
I never really wanted that. I was like, I'll figure something out along the way. And I've been extremely lucky that most things in my life have kind of just crossed my path in the right time. But
me too.
Yeah. If you're paying attention, there's some amazing things that can come your way.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was walking down the street one time in Denver and walked past a girl I hadn't seen in 10 years. I'm like, hey, Mary Beth, how are you doing? And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if you're paying attention, the world can be pretty amazing.
You know, do you ever run across people that you see the opportunities, like walk by them?
Yes.
And did you just see that? You know,
Yeah.
Look at this. Look what you can do here. You know, with my kids and stuff like that, they want to learn how to work and be in the workforce. I commend that, but I've always been telling them from a young age, think entrepreneurially.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have to depend. It's okay to go trade your time for your hours for money. That's fine.
Yes.
But understand that at some point, if you decide to do your thing, you can do it. So long as we have the governmental structure still in place to do that. But anyway, another tangent. And I kind of, instill in them that notion so they know that moving forward. But you got to sometimes like take their head and there's the opportunity.
Yes.
You need to see that. You could totally do this.
Well, let's go back to your kid thing, because I think this is vastly important and a lot of people don't do it. We were raised by advice that was good at the time that's no longer good advice.
Right.
So for example, go to school, get a job, get married, die. That was the only advice that our grandparents gave our parents.
Right.
Well, at the time there was no internet. There was you had to work at a company or, a store or something of that nature. There were only jobs. If you were an entrepreneur 30 years ago, it meant you couldn't get a job.
Yeah.
But now we have access to everything and it's available 24 hours a day. And so you don't have to go work at a corporate job. And as a matter of fact, look, I was 21 and a half years at a corporate job, but the minute that corporations went away from pension plans to 401k means that they don't care about the people anymore. So it used to be a barter agreement. I'll give you 20 to 30 years of my life. You take care of me for the rest of my life. That's when pensions were there. Once pensions went away, you're only as good to me as long as you're employed one way or the other.
Wow.
And so why do I stay at a company if I can go make more money and they're going to contribute more to my 401k versus before you would stay, because if you stayed and worked there, then you got a pension that took care of you later in life or your spouse or your kids.
Yeah.
But when that went away, there's no sense of loyalty either way. Companies aren't loyal to employees. Employees aren't loyal to companies because now there's no longer a need for it. There's no reward for it in the long run.
It's and you hear a lot of the gurus, coaches out there. Entrepreneurialism is a big thing now.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool, which means it's probably not being done right. So you kind of go forward with this kind of a thing and realize that a lot of people, it is a great time to be alive.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you're running a business, you still need worker bees.
Yes, you do.
You know,
do. Absolutely.
It's like if everybody, you're telling me, what if everybody's entrepreneurial?
Well, and some people don't want to be. Some people like being told what to do.
Yeah.
And look, I did that for 20 years. It's just not a requirement like it once was.
Right.
So to your point, because we can work 24 hours a day, and there's people like Grant Cardone talk about, well, go work your 8 to 5 job and then spend 4 hours at night working on yourself or whatever side business you want. That's what's interesting about the day and age we live in, is you have the ability to do whatever you want. If you work from home, the downside is work doesn't end like it used to when it was 9 to 5. It used to be, okay, well, all we had was fax machines. So when you left work, nobody could call you. Nobody could page you. You don't get on your laptop and go check this email. People used to go to work for a certain time.
Yeah.
Now we all end up working far, far more than we ever did because it doesn't leave us. Our laptop goes with us. Our cell phone goes with us. That's why it's an interesting time, and that's outdated advice. But, go work for a company because that's how you're going to make a lot more money fast. Like the first year of being an entrepreneur, I made 1/10 of what I made when I was an employee last.
Yeah, yeah. And
people don't tell you that. You see the successful people, but you don't hear the struggle to get there unless you dive in deep to everyone.
When did you make the jump?
In November of 2022.
Full-time in entrepreneurship? Really?
Yes. Well, it was kind of by default. I was actually going through a divorce in 2021. I always said, hey, look, I'm in 2 bad relationships. I'm going to finish one and I'm going to get out of the other one. And I was interviewed at, there's something called Traffic and Conversion, big digital marketing conference. And it was in San Diego that year. And somebody has asked, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I decode people's facial features. And this guy's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I was trained by attorneys how to understand other people based on their resting facial features. And he's like, no. So I dissected a few people and analyzed them right in front of him. He's like, oh, we got to make some podcast or some quick videos for his social media. And one of those videos hit 3 million views like that over Thanksgiving weekend. And I had always had everything set up on TikTok as private. Subtle Skills was there. You couldn't find anything Brian Galke at all.
Right.
And all of a sudden it said, these people watch my videos. And I was like, oh crap, because they made a change in TikTok that said anybody who is, if you have your phone number in your phone, you are now shown their videos.
Oh gosh.
Yes. And
so you were trying to keep under the radar.
Yes, 100%. Because I was a regional vice president of sales. I liked my customers and my coworkers. I wasn't really enthused with the job anymore or that industry, but it still paid the bills. Had ex-wife, kids, all that fun stuff, and so I was still there. So I did everything in subtle skills. And all of a sudden, a week after that video went viral, I get the call, hey, thank you for your time. And I said, well, what am I getting let go for? And they said, well, we don't know. HR will tell you. And it said repetitive poor performance or something of that nature. But yet I'd never had a single HR write-up in my entire 21 and a half years. 9 promotions from help desk to regional vice president, never written up. But then later on, I heard that some customers saw that video. And one of the things, it talked about how much I made. And my customers didn't make what I made. And I think it caused a big ruckus.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. But best thing that ever happened to me because I had golden handcuffs. Yeah. And I used to take time off of work to go to seminars to learn. Yeah. And then I started getting asked to speak. And I'm like, I'll speak, but I can't speak for pay because that'd be a conflict of interest. So I would take vacation days and I would go and speak for free. And people are like, when are you going to leave and just be a full-time speaker and coach? And I'm like, I have this thing. And I was raised in that, safe job. But when they let me go with zero.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And they said,
just proves your point.
You're fired. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I lived off my 401k for a year because you know what? I put that money in to develop the rest of my life. And that's what it took to get me there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing kind of happened to me. You were kind of left and with your back against the wall.
Yes.
We had one paycheck to go, family, mortgage, house, kids, all that fun stuff, car payment. And it was the second time it happened to me in 3 years. And I just, I talked to my wife on the way home. She says, well, what are you going to look for? I'm not looking for anything. It's time to do me.
100%.
And that's what I've been doing the last 8-9 years now. Mm-hmm. So, and you just never know until you try and you get a peek behind the curtain. Yes. At first, it's going to be terrifying.
Oh, 100%.
If you don't have anything to back you up. I mean, if you don't have a nest egg, you're just that more motivated to figure it out.
Yeah. You listen to a lot of the big success stories. What was it like? The Rock moved to LA with $7 in his jeans, Ed Milet, he couldn't pay his bills. And so they were showering in the pool and at the gym because he kept a gym membership, but they couldn't pay their water bill and all these things. So you hear these people's struggles, but so few people want to share that where they started and going through all that. They just want you to see everything that I have now. Yeah. And I think
the Beyonce effect.
Yes.
Yeah. They don't want to see and that's the thing is that what Vaynerchuk talks about is documenting over creating.
Yes.
What people get wrong on that is that they don't want to document the warts and the ugly stuff. Right. They want to show the wins. Mm-hmm. For example, I have a acquaintance of mine who was in the digital content creation space for a company, and then the company brought him on to do what they do. Mm-hmm. And it was have to get licensed for it and everything. I'm being very vague.
Yes.
But 2 weeks into him being licensed, he starts putting videos out and like, here's what you need to do. And I'm like, no. You're not allowed to do that. You need to get stripes.
Yes.
And that's what drives me nuts about that space these days is that so many people talking about stuff they know nothing about. They're trying to be experts, and I can always appreciate somebody who's earned their stripes doing it,
So I want to go back to Beyonce for 1 second because I think this will help your audience. Do you know the background of what her name was before she was Beyonce?
No.
So she grew up singing in a choir in church. Well, so when the record labels picked her up, then they wanted suggestive outfits and a little more dancing. She wasn't comfortable with it. So she had to create an alter ego known as Sasha Fierce. And so when she went on stage, she temporarily became Sasha Fierce so that she could perform not as Beyonce. And the reason I share that is you're right. When you first start putting stuff out there, it's going to suck. But if you can put on that temporary, this is who I am for the short term, then it can help you be that person. So I became Subtle Skills. And why? Because when I went out as that, it wasn't Brian. They weren't judging me. They were judging my knowledge and the other things. So there's a great book. I'll think of the name here in a minute because that's where I learned that story. Oh, the alter ego effect. Mm-hmm. And so there are athletes, since we were talking about football players earlier, that one guy said he becomes Jason when he steps on the field. And it's not to kill people, but it's because Jason is unstoppable. Mm-hmm. So the minute he crosses onto the field, he becomes Jason from Friday the 13th in his head. And then the minute he steps off field and he takes off his helmet, he's back to who he is.
That's funny.
But there is ways to work past that initial uncomfortable part because we all suck in the beginning. I just posted a video of me speaking at 2018 where the whole time my voice was shaking like this and I forgot what I was going to talk about. Yeah. And it's important for people to see that because people see where we are, not where we came from.
See, I'm a big proponent of making fun of myself.
Oh, yes.
I say, a lot. I stammer, and I constantly work on it. But I point it out to point to other people that even with my experience doing what I do,
Right.
podcasting, radio, voiceover, I still screw up.
Yes.
It's going to happen. All right. I've seen the greats screw up. Big names screw up. And it's like,
Yes.
you can't let that see the light. Why not?
It shows everybody we're human.
You're human.
I will go the polar opposite of that. And that is the pandemic made us realize we're all humans and we're people. So it used to be before that, if you had a Zoom meeting and your kid or your pet showed up, it was like, what are you doing? You're so unprofessional. Now we expect it, right? People are like, oh, hey, sorry, my cat jumped in my lap. Like, cool. What's your cat's name?
Yeah.
We've kind of changed to where we accept who people are instead of this professional demeanor that we have to have all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the words that's kind of been bastardized over the last 10 years or so is the word authenticity.
Yes.
Authenticity is like awesome. It's like epic.
Yes.
It has no power anymore.
Exactly.
It's like racism. It has no
Right.
power anymore. It's been overused. Authenticity is not authentic anymore.
Correct.
And it's like, okay, what is authentic anymore? And
It's hard to tell.
What it is and it isn't. I think to a young person it is. I think to somebody like us, we've been around the block a few times.
Right.
We've got some life under our belts. Especially with you being able to read features of the body, knowing when you're being BS'd.
Yes.
And I think that's intrinsic in all of us, especially getting younger now, because we're in a constant, at least the circles we kind of run in the entrepreneurial bropreneur type of, not that you're in that group, but I'm saying that a lot of people that we, either associate with or are familiar with are putting that foot forward.
Yes.
And it's very easy to discern now.
Yes.
To me, it's just something about it. I'm not buying it. I'm sorry.
So here's my concern. I just left Vegas, and Vegas was I spoke at an AI conference. Well, it was a conference called Gregory's Secret Knock, but a majority of the people were talking about AI because that's what most people are interested in. The challenge is with deep fakes and things coming out.
Oh gosh.
It's going to be so hard to know who's real, who's not.
Yeah.
So I tell people, unless you're at an event or somebody who's at the event, not your friend's friend, don't believe anything you see anymore.
Yeah.
And I do think with AI coming out, are you familiar with the intelligent.com survey that was done for employers last year about hiring kids out of college? Okay, it's going to play into my point. I'm going in a direction with this. So they did a survey of 800 employers about hiring kids out of college. 59% of them couldn't make eye contact with the interviewers. 51% turned off their camera for a virtual interview.
Oh, wow.
And 19 brought their parents with them to the interview, 19%. And people want to bag on kids. Oh, these young kids, they don't know. But they were raised with this device.
Yeah.
And so they've had phones, they've had text messaging. So we raise them in an environment where they can perfect everything before it's delivered. And yet we expect them to show up and be who they are in person. So imagine, I grew up, you grew up, we took a picture, we sent it to Fox or Eckerd's and hoped it looked good when we got it back in a week and we had red eyes and everything. Kids now, oh, I don't like that picture. Let me immediately delete it and fix it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they're trying to create perfection over and over again. And when they don't get that, then they have anxiety. So they can perfect text message, the perfect email, the perfect picture, all before it goes up on this fake social media page where we only show our best highlights. And then when they get in face-to-face communications, it's the same level of anxiety that our generation was public speaking.
Yeah.
Because we grew up, the phone rang, we didn't know who it was. We just took this wild chance and answered it.
Yeah.
Everything on us was just, you took a chance. But for them, caller ID's there. They know who they're going to talk to. They see the text message. They can reply, edit, change it, craft an email, go use ChatGPT. So they've got to start learning real life skills because AI and automation will replace people. And right now they're struggling. So we have to help younger kids realize what you're talking about. How do you detect someone's BS? They have no clue because everything for them is digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your getting into the meat of the subject here, doing what you do, in your corporate job, was that what led you into it and got you more interested? And did you start using it unbeknownst to other people?
Yes. So I'm an introvert by nature. And so I felt like I missed that day of school where they taught us how to be friends with everyone. Right. And so, but I love to be around people. So the term is ambivert. So I'm an introvert in that I'm terrified of people, but I love being surrounded by people. So it was a really weird place to be. And on a sad note, there's nothing worse than being alone in a public setting. And so what I figured out is I picked up books on body language, how to win friends and influence people. And when I started focusing on other people, I wasn't in my own head. And that's where introverts live. And 2010, fluke circumstance changed my life. So I'd written books to answer your question. Body language is what I first started using to understand people. How do they dress? What do they say? Statement analysis. But in 2010, a friend came in from out of town. She said, let's go to dinner. I show up to the restaurant. She calls it, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, fine, whatever. And she's like, no, I need you to come over and meet this guy. I'm like, no, I already had a glass of wine. I'm going to stay here. She's like, I want you to come meet this guy. I said, why do I need to come meet him? She said, because he reads faces. I go, that's a bunch of BS. I am not going over there for that crap. And she finally convinced me, go, hey, I'm only in town for a few more days, you name it. So I went over there, but I was going to go prove that this guy was a fraud. I was waiting for him. Barnum statements, things that are so generic that, they apply to everyone, kind of like horoscopes. And so I'm just wouldn't, go there, arms crossed. And I thought, I'm going to get this guy. And he sat 8 of us down at dinner and he started dissecting people to a T, including me. I was like, has this dude been digging through my trash? It was that accurate. But I was still skeptical, but I'm a curious skeptic. So I bought his book. And he lived in Fort Worth. I live in Dallas. And twice a month, I drive from Dallas to Fort Worth and study in a group setting. And I started testing this when I was on the road, talking to customers, giving training. And I found it to be effective. But I still thought, all right, let me double check. So I would leave the book out when I went to a restaurant on my table. I like to sit at the bar because then I'm around people versus sitting alone. And naturally, somebody go, what's that book about? And I go, well, I kind of think this guy's full of crap. But can I tell you what I've learned and I'll show you in the book? And they'd say, yeah. And it was never 100%, but it was high 90s. Mm-hmm. And it worked out in my favor because when I'd go back to that bar, they're like, that guy's back. And so they bring over new staff and then a manager. And then all of a sudden they're like, can we get you something to eat or drink? I'm like, yes, you can. So I got free food and drink out of it. So it was like a reward system, like Pavlov's dog. And then I started using it at work, but I would never tell anybody what I did. As a matter of fact, until the day I got fired in 2022, I never told anybody how I was being successful and how I could go in and win these things. And it wasn't me alone. To be fair, we had a team. We had an RFPs, which is a request for proposal, all kinds of people that were involved. But I was even part of what they call the pro demo team at one point, which they flew me and 2 other people all around the US to give presentations because we were killing it. But I was never telling anybody what my secret weapons were. Mm-hmm. And it was body language, statement analysis, and decoding facial features. Mm-hmm. But here's where decoding faces is really cool. I can look you up on LinkedIn before I ever meet you, and I customize the presentation for you based on what your face tells me about you. Yeah. And so, for example, if I looked and they had larger eyes and smaller ears, well, then they're visual people. So I'd add into the presentation like, well, once you see what we're doing here and picture this, because I'm using visual words, if they had larger ears and smaller eyes, then they're auditory. Well, wait till you hear this. Or, oh, well, it sounds like... Mm-hmm. And then I'd use auditory words. So it's learning to speak their language is what made people know, hey, this is actually for me versus you're just showing up and throwing up with the same presentation you've done over and over and over again.
Mercedes had an element of that in their training. They called it VAC.
Yeah.
Visual, auditory, and kinesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to see this tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things I'm going to talk about is, are you trying to speak to everyone or are you only speaking your language?
Right.
And we're kind of raised wrong in that the golden rule was meant to be good. Treat people the way you want to be treated. The problem is not everybody wants to be treated like you want to be treated.
Right.
So now if I'm putting anything out in print or when we used to do these RFP responses, the RFP writers, I would go back in and add in visual, auditory, and kinesthetic words. Mm-hmm. Do I see where you're coming from? Does this sound like a good idea? For kinesthetic, it's once we get moving on this thing.
Right.
Or when I do presentations, if I saw a kinesthetic person, I'd roll up my sleeves while we're talking, because why do we roll up our sleeves? We roll up our sleeves to go to work. So it's learning to speak other people's language and not just project what you want to say. Yeah. Changed my life.
It's nuts because I'm aware of it, but I always forget about it.
Yeah.
I don't put it into common practice every day where I should.
You should, especially anything that's not like any emails that may get forwarded on to someone else. So you think you're dealing with a decision maker. Mm-hmm. If you are, and you know they're the decision maker, make it for that person. But if could be somebody else who's the decision maker, add in all 3 of those. And then whoever they forward it to, you're speaking to that person and whoever else it goes to.
So you've been now with me for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So far, what am I doing?
So I can tell you, it's fun. You, like me, don't have a lot of upper eyelids. You're fine doing things by yourself. If other people join you, cool. Mm-hmm. Your cheeks, here's one that's interesting, is you have inset cheeks. So inset cheeks are a sprinter's cheeks. Go hard, take a break. Go hard, take a break. And so if I'm working with you on something, I'll be like, okay, he's going to run in sprints. That's how he does things. Large nostrils are people who can get plenty of air in, so they tend to attack a lot of tasks and take a lot onto their plate. people who have small nostrils think in terms of scarcity. You think in terms of abundance. So it's interesting when you're talking to someone, if they've got really small nostrils that you're thinking like, how do they get air up there? Those are people that think in terms of scarcity. So you have to help them have a safe base, and then you can talk about what else can happen. But for someone like you who has larger nostrils, then I already know I can talk about what's the end reward of things. I don't have to build up to it.
See, the thing is, like, even taking pictures these days, I used to have, I guess maybe it's because of weight or age, which I'm working on the weight side, not so much the age side, not much I can do about that. I notice that when I take pictures now, my eyes are squinty. And I'm trying to like, okay, I need to open my eyes, again, get that perfection. And every time I do that, I look like a freaking lunatic, like.
Yeah. Crazy eyes.
Yeah. But it's like this, because I didn't like my smile for a long time in photo, because I, try and fake it or just smile. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would laugh. I would go, okay, take it. And I'd freeze my face because that was a genuine joyous
smile.
face.
Yes.
But now as I've gotten older, it's like my eye, like I look like I have my eyes closed,
I laugh because one of the things that my ex-wife did that was very creative is she got custom bobblehead dolls for our wedding cake. You should have seen the versions they sent to me, because she sent them all pictures of me smiling. And I'm like, when I smile, my eyes. So I look like I didn't have eyes. Like it was like eyebrow and cheek,
Right.
And so I had to do that, forced smile. And I do think about that when I'm taking pictures, because especially when I'm looking and I'm squinting like, all right, where's the camera again? I'll squint even more, and I'm like, I look like I have no eyes. And what's crazy about that is when I'm not smiling, I have larger eyes, and I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
Like I have to listen to Audible on 1.5 to 2.5 times speed, because if not, something visual will catch my attention.
Yeah.
But I do the same thing when I smile. I'm like, God. So I purposely open my eyes a little bit and think, open eyes, Brian.
It's time to evolve the picture taking process for me, where it's like, I see a lot of people, maybe I just don't smile. Maybe I just do the.
Well, either that or we find an app that, how they do the autocorrect where it fixes the colors. It just makes our eyes larger.
Yeah. I don't know how good. I want it to still be authentic, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's, I'm even looking at myself in the camera right now. But I do like to describe it to people listening, is that not really pursing my lips together, like, just. But even then, my eyes would still look like they're squinting. A little bit.
Well, and when you do that, it's that kind of like, smile. So that's the
I'm
danger.
self-conscious about my teeth.
That's right.
That's what I see when people do that.
So here's what's funny. The opposite of that, a lot of kids grew up with this horror, because kids are really mean to each other.
Yeah.
But when they smile, they're like, oh, you got a gummy smile. Well, in physiognomy, which is, I need to explain this here in a minute, but if people smile so big that you can see all their teeth and their gums, those are people who don't hold back. Once they're in to support you, they are all the way in to support you. Oh, wow. Once I explained that to people who had a quote unquote gummy smile, they were traumatized by having that as a kid. So they'll smile like this, like Fire Marshal Bill. But once I explained it to them, they're like, oh my God, I love my smile now. I'm like, yes. And that's the crazy thing. I realized we jumped in without talking about it. So the guy that I met was an attorney who learned it in law school for jury consulting. And he realized it had a practical application all around the world. So he left his law practice and taught this all around the world. What's crazy is it's been around since the Greeks. If you could look it up, it's called physiognomy. Now, the first thing that's going to show up is going to say it's a pseudoscience. And it is, because a pseudoscience is if anybody claims something is a science, but it doesn't meet all 5 metrics of the scientific method, it's a pseudoscience. My answer is pick up a book. I don't have mine finished yet, so you're not going to help me with it, and go and test it yourself. But that's how I got into it. But there's 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscles. And so when our parents said, don't make that face or it's going to get stuck that way, there's actually some truth to that. And so in my presentations, you won't see it on this one, but it's a picture of me at 18 versus 38, how much my own face had changed over time. And it's why we say things like if somebody leaves a bad work environment, a bad relationship, and we say, gosh, you just look like a different person. It's because they do. They go from frowning to smiling. They smile more. Their eyes our eye angle can change over time. So when I was young, my eyes angled down quite a bit. So, for the people who are listening, you go from the inside of the eye to the outside of the eye. And if you had a business card, how would it look? Would it look, upward angled, even, or down? Mine used to angle down. I was raised in a very loving environment, but they said, hey, things don't always work out. What's your backup plan? What's your backup plan? Well, as I became more successful, I didn't have to keep thinking of backup plans because I kept getting in promotions. I was like, hey, this is great. And so my eyes slowly changed over time. So those 43 muscles are constantly pulling and twerking. And just like well, not that kind of twerking, but just like if you go to the gym, if you only do arms, right, you'll have nice arms, but not small chest. And, so that's the whole point of having a trainer and all these things is they have to constantly adjust and shift the body. Well, the same thing with our face.
So now I'm looking at my eyes.
Yeah.
Trying to see which way they're pointing. Well, let me adjust the camera here. Yeah, I guess they're kind of going downward.
They slightly go down. So if I was talking, let's say I'm going to sell you something, because people always want like, how can I use this? Well, we'll talk about sales, then we'll talk about dating. So in sales, I would let you know that I've thought about the downsides of it. So when I used to do this for the corporation I did before, I'd say, hey, this isn't the first generation of our product. This is what we learned from the mistakes in the field in the first generation that made it a better product this time around. Mm-hmm. But if their eyes angled up and they only want to hear about the upsides, I'd say, this is why we're the number one in the industry. And these are the reasons that you should go with us. Mm-hmm. So their eye angle told me how to talk. It's the same product, but how do I explain it to you? Eye angle is what I used for that.
So did you have a good batting average with sales prior to all this?
No.
And then it really okay, so I'm going to try this.
Yes.
See if it works, even though it may be against every fiber of my being.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what we did in the car business. They taught us a lot about psychology, just even basic stuff from a buddy of mine. Just, when you talk to people nodding your head,
right,
and they get to be agreeable by just looking at you nodding your head.
Mirroring and matching.
Yeah.
I talk about that in my training courses because mirroring and matching, the problem is so many people know mirroring and so many people do it wrong.
Yeah.
So they'll look at you and go, oh, his arms are crossed. I should now cross my arms. And people are like, I know what you're doing. So I speak in the automotive industry. A good friend of mine, Joe Ingram, does sales training. Yeah, I love Joe.
Yeah.
And
I'm familiar with him.
Yeah. Well, and we all know each other through Brad Lee, which didn't I see that you were on?
I was on his. He's been on mine a few times.
Yeah. So you asked me earlier if I'd watch anything. I started to watch that one the other day because I'm like, he knows Brad.
Yeah.
Because Brad changed my life. I saw him speak at an event and I'm like, man, I really like this guy. And then he's
so likable.
Yeah. He announced that he was creating something called Closer School, and I instantly signed up. And the very first one was him sitting around his conference table in his conference room, a big table. He's like, so what are we going to do with this? And I've been in it for 5 years because there's something about the way he says things. It's the same things I've heard from 100 other people, but the way Brad says it changed my life.
That's the thing, is that when you get a guy in that business that's taught by not old school car dogs, but there is a way that when you're selling the second largest item someone's going to buy, and you're getting regular practice at it every single day. That's the thing about the car business. I tell people, look, if you don't know what to do, then find a job selling cars.
Right.
And understand you may hate it. Embrace the hate.
Yeah.
Fall in love with it. Find the joy as much as you can. Do it for 2 or 3 years. If you still don't like it, then you're equipped to go do something else.
100%.
You know what I mean? And I tell my kids that. If you don't know what to do, go sell cars. It's not forever.
Right.
Okay. And once you have that education down, to me, that was my college education. I tell people that all the time. That it was an amazing experience that I still use to this day, all those techniques.
Because you can't do advanced preparation.
Right.
People just show up and you have to figure out, how do I befriend this person? How do I help this person? And what I really liked about Brad and them is they're like, how do I help this person get into a car? Not, I'm going to sell them and make this much in commission. It's the mindset that goes along with it. There are some people that are just all about, let me make the dollar. That's all I'm interested in. But then there's the people that you can tell want to help the person the best way they can.
Relational versus transactional.
100%.
Yeah.
And, well, while we're on the Brad Lee story, so Brad brought on Janine Driver, who we just talked about a little bit earlier.
Yep.
And I was like, man, she's so good. I'm going to go buy her book. And we were living in Arizona at the time because my ex-wife had a 90-day gig in Arizona. We had a 2-year-old, so we just moved the family there. And I immediately went to Barnes & Noble, bought her book, read it while we were there, and I got home and found out I already had her book at home.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to read it for a second time. But her and I became friends at the time. She had been recently divorced and she was dating. And so she would send me pictures of the guys. I'm like, well, this is what you have in common. This is what's different. And I helped her in her dating life. And so she was going to speak at one of Brad's events. And I said, all right, I think I'm going to buy the VIP ticket. I'm going to come out there. I want to hang out with you and Brad. She goes, hold on one second. Let me call you back. She calls back. She goes, you're not buying that ticket. I go, why? She goes, you're coming as a speaker. And she gave me 15 minutes of her time.
So that like an opening act comic.
Yes. And it was my first stage ever. I was up there. It was not my best performance, but Brad and Janine gave me that opportunity and it changed my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's really good about that. I got on his radar by doing his intro just on spec.
Yeah.
You can go back and watch the video literally back in 2018 or 2019, maybe. I'm like, hey, I wasn't a big fan of his, and he knows this at first because I got introduced to him through I think Cardone had him at 10X, and then Coach.
That's where I was in the one in Vegas.
And then the more I listened to him, like, you know what? I like this guy. I like what he's doing. And just kind of did an intro for him, sent it out. I blew him up on Twitter, Facebook, all these different platforms. Right. And it's me actually voicing the parts, and I strung them all together and made the piece like I used to do in radio for intros. And he's still using it.
So you're the dropping bombs?
Yeah, dropping bombs.
That's why you sound so familiar. Okay, that's why when we were doing the venue walkthrough yesterday, I'm like, why does he sound so familiar?
That's the guy? Oh my gosh. Jeez. That's the bane of voiceover people. You see what they look like. Really? Oh my gosh.
Well, we all don't even like to hear our own voice, so don't take offense to it.
I've been doing it so long, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
You hear how we talk. Even conversationally, it bothers me because my father had in his 50s, I noticed a pretty pronounced stammering issue. Like he couldn't collect his thoughts and think about what he wanted to say in front of a customer or something like that. He owned his own business as well. And to the point where I would hear the customers kind of make fun of him behind his back because he was 50. We were going through a recession. It was very stressful. I think his confidence was being chipped away.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever that kind of stuff happens, it's tough, especially as you kind of get, adult fog brain.
Oh, yes.
Which is a thing. It really kind of just messes you up, and I'm very cognizant of that now. I'm trying to really think about what I say.
Yes.
Even like, as you're probably noticing, I do a lot with my hands.
Right.
What does that mean?
Oh, what does that mean? Keeping your brain active. So
is that what that is?
Yeah. So if you're nervous in body language, then you can do different things. Like if you don't realize you're doing it, but people run their hands on it's because they're getting rid of the sweat that's on here. Mm-hmm. This is a pacifying gesture. Mm-hmm. So it's no different than giving yourself a hug. So when you're doing stuff like that, it's just kind of keeping yourself calm.
I'm going to zoom out on you so people can see. Yeah, here.
So if you're going like this, that's a nervousness, right?
Rubbing your hands on your pants.
It's a self-pacifying. So same thing with hands. When we're ringing, it's like giving yourself a little massage, like, hey, it's okay. We can calm things down. Yeah.
So it's like I'm like digging my thumbnail into the side of my finger, and I know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And there's like, sometimes I'll steeple, sometimes I'll...
Steepling is always good. Yes.
Yeah. And I've seen people do that, and I'm aware of what they're trying to convey. And to me, it's like disingenuous when they're doing that, because it's an unnatural thing.
Well, it is and it isn't. The reason we'll teach it to people is because sometimes it's just to keep what they should do with their hands. Because if not, you'll find people standing with their hands in fists and they don't realize it. And so even though they're by their side, we subconsciously pay attention to that. There's a really good book called The Like Switch. So it sounds like light switch, but like Like. And in that, they talk about how they teach 3-letter agency people when they walk into a room, walk in, raise your eyebrows, tilt your head, and smile. And the reason for the raising of the eyebrows is because when any stranger enters a room, we subconsciously go back to our historic thinking of, who is that person? Are they here to help me or harm me?
Is he a threat?
Yes. Yeah. So when you raise up, it's recognition. When you squint down, it's foe. So friend, foe. So eyebrows up, friendly. Hey, like you recognize someone. Squinting, you're foe. After they look at your eyes, they look at your hands. What's in your hands that can hurt me? So if you're standing and you don't know what to do with your hands and you're sitting with your hands in a fist, you look like you're ready to fight.
Yeah.
You stick your hands in your pockets. What's in your pockets? You stick your hands behind your back. Why is it behind your back? What do you have? So that's why they teach people to do the steeple is, yes, it can be natural over time like anything else. But if you're trying to do it to go, look at how smart I am, like an evil genius, that's bad.
Yeah.
But if you just do it in front, it's fine. Another great guy that teaches a lot of this is Rene Rodriguez. I love Rene. He's awesome. Mm-hmm. I had to go on after him at an event that Brad did. I'm like, I don't want to have to go on after Rene.
Yep.
But I just went to his event in Dallas 2 weeks ago, and he's just so good at teaching that. What's the zone of influence? It's in between your torso, right? So above the belly button in here. So you keep your hands where people can see it. So the reason that we show palms is because we're not a threat.
Right.
So when you're talking, you can do the steeple. It shows authority. You can show your palms. They actually teach in high-end hotels. When you ask where the bathroom is, they don't say it's over there and point. Yeah. It's this way. Mm-hmm. And that little difference isn't somebody pointing where you need to go when you were in trouble as a kid, but let me help guide you to the restroom gracefully.
That's how they taught us to do the walk-arounds on the cars.
Yes.
Yeah, gesture to the car, don't point.
Exactly.
And if you do, kind of make it like an upturned 2-finger point kind of thing.
Yeah, the old Vanna White. The Price is Right. Here's the new car.
It's amazing. And that's the fascination, because so many people are aware of these things. Nobody can define, or not nobody, but very few can define them.
Right.
You know, I talk a lot with my hands, as you can see. I don't know if that's the Italian part of me. I just found out that I'm 41% Jewish. I don't know, you know, judging by the hair, that makes sense. You know, and there's a lot of things I notice about myself. I'm like, I know I do this a lot and use my hands when I'm listening to people, you know, like you say, self-massaging. I'm like, but I'm not nervous. I'm not, you know, I don't know if I'm calming myself down. Maybe I'm just kind of trying to be a good host and ask good questions and things. Maybe that's a nervousness.
It's wanting to do a good job for your audience.
Yeah.
You'll notice girls won't even realize that sometimes they're sitting there preening their hair.
Yeah.
And they'll just be talking. They have no idea that they're doing it. And you're like, what?
But doesn't that usually mean they like you?
It can mean that, but you can just be talking to somebody and they have no idea.
Yeah.
They do it all the time. So back to your point, there's so much that's out there that we're never taught. Now, going back to physiognomy, aka face reading, by the way, authors and artists used to take courses to do character development. So all the required reading we had as a kid, the only two ways to describe characters in a book was through their actions and through their facial features. So we've been taught our entire elementary school life of how do you understand people based on those two things? Because older books didn't have, you know, Ferraris and Lambos and red bottom shoes and fancy watches. Men wore suits, women wore dresses, and that was it. So they had to describe the character. So you can Google Edgar Allan Poe, Dickinson. They all took classes in physiognomy to understand how to describe characters in their books.
Wow.
And then authors and artists did as well. And that's why you can turn on any Disney movie and you know who's a hero and who's a villain immediately.
There's a guy, when I worked for Jack FM, we took a, look at the way I'm pointing right now. I'm doing the A-OK,
That's right.
But I'm pointing with my bottom three fingers. That's my politician move. That's more of like, you know, Robert De Niro.
Well, I used to do scuba diving. That was the okay. So when you came out, and then, okay. Yeah.
So there was this technology that was taught to us, and they use it for designing characters for movies, video games especially, and it's called a character diamond.
Yes.
And it's fascinating stuff. They said the Jack FM character was the most complex character they've ever had to assess. Very complex. Well, the way they actually used to demonstrate how the character diamond worked was with that scene from The Matrix, the first movie, where he meets the Oracle for the first time.
Yes.
And she is such a complex character herself.
Right.
It's so fascinating, you know, because she goes through all these things telling him, look, being the one is like being in love. You just know it.
Yes.
Now let's take a look at you. Let's see. So she has all these little nuances about her. The Oracle, you think it's this, you know, all-knowing Wizard of Oz character.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's just some old woman and she's baking cookies.
Right.
You know, and it's so interesting. And I can't remember the guy's name, but you should look it up and maybe collaborate with him. He's the actual inventor of the technology.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, like all you guys need to just do just a day-long event at the Wizard Academy down in Austin. You ever hear of the Wizard Academy?
I've heard of it. I can't remember who I heard about it.
You
from,
gotta
though.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta
Somebody
go.
was telling me about it.
It's one of those things that, damn it, why aren't they in the vernacular like everybody else is?
Yeah.
They, if anybody, deserve it. They just haven't pursued it. It's crazy.
Well, to your point, I think more and more people need to collaborate on things. So Janine Driver and I have a course called Read the Face, Read the Room, where the first half of the day I teach how do you look up people on LinkedIn, social media, how do you prepare to get in there, and how do you get into the room? Because you have to win them over email, conversation, all those things. And then Janine takes over the second half, which is once you're in the room, what do you need to watch out for? Statement analysis, body language, nervous tics. What are they doing? So and we came together because we love working together. And so anytime she's an event near me, I'll go and hang out with her because just time along with her. And we started realizing these executives and sales teams would ask us questions and they played off of each other so well. We're like, why did we not make this a course?
Wow.
But I agree. I think there needs to be more of that where people don't have to say my answer is the only answer, but instead of how do we make better people when they're in the room?
I agree.
And with AI, going back to something that I forgot I was going to mention earlier, with AI coming in, the whole reason we use AI is so who can I get rid of, right? What do I no longer need to pay for?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to happen. Automation AI is going to take out a lot of jobs, a lot of people. And so I always say the two AIs you need to be already interesting, meaning if somebody Googles your name, what do they find about you? What's your brand? What makes you stand out? What makes people want to dig in and learn more? And then you have to be actually interested in other people. So don't make it about your product. But if you learn how to converse and interact with other people, you may be replaced over time, but it's going to be a lot tougher than if you just only do things over email and text.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't mind having in-person conversations, as you can tell.
Yes, I love this.
This is something that I I think is a strength of mine.
Yes.
Hopefully asking good questions. My business partner he's like, that's one of your superpowers is asking really like, oh God, I never thought about, answering a question like that.
Right.
I guess out of left field kind of questions that are deep and thoughtful.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from. It's just a filter thing, even if it's kind of like mildly like what I'm about to ask you about next that you should probably be prepared for is, but my business partner is kind of like me where, I want to be judged by the stuff that falls out of my mouth, not necessarily how I look. If anything, how I look sends a signal already. Like if you're too sharp dressed,
yes,
buddy, my awareness is elevated.
100%.
You know what I mean? You're overcompensating for something. Brad he dresses well, but he's so just, you can relate to how he's dressing. I could relate 100%. To how you're dressing.
Yeah.
When I see somebody that's like dressed to the nines,
yeah,
buddy, I'm going to analyze everything that falls out of your mouth because I feel like this is helping you sell me some BS.
Well,
and my business partner is doing a TEDx talk this Thursday.
Yeah.
This is how I call him the reluctant social entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He needs to be more social. He needs to teach people. You need to take anything?
No, it just came up and I was like, why? I have it on Do Not Disturb. So
he basically doesn't look the part of what you typically consider a successful entrepreneur. He's got the dad bod. He's got curly hair. He's not a bad looking guy, but he looks, they call him Frodo. It's his middle name he looks like a hobbit.
Yeah.
But when you hear him speak, it's like, oh wow, okay. This guy knows his stuff.
Yeah.
So he's gone into like corporate boardrooms and CFO meetings that I've been a part of. And dude, if he gets in front of you, beware, you're about to get closed.
Yeah.
There's a 90 to 95% chance you're getting closed.
So what is he speaking? Is he speaking at the Old Hickory?
Yeah.
I'm going to be there.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's the first speaker.
I came in to support Jim. So, I'm coming in to speak at Jim's event tomorrow. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to stay and watch your talk. And then I fly to Miami to go speak at Sam Taggart's event.
Dude, I would imagine that you can probably, you probably have a little bit of a revenue stream just from analyzing speakers.
You can. What I did by design that hurt me on year one was I said, I don't know if I like speaking just because I didn't like my other job. So for 1 year, I'm going to do nothing but speak.
Yeah.
And I didn't set up other pillars of revenue. And that hurt me in year two.
Yeah.
But you can. The amount of people have been reaching out, consistency of video is amazing. You have a few pop. Like I had one pop in January that was like 3.5 million views, added 85,000 followers in 2 months.
Yeah. Well, you have an opportunity to make a friend, I think, with Mr. Steve Sims.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you got on his radar recently.
Well, he's my coach. So
really?
Going back to what you talked about is when I got into this, Steve was the first official stage I spoke on. So Brad, Janine gave me 15 minutes. I was on a podcast, and funny enough, how I started with you, telling him to trim that upper mustache. Steve first said, do you think I care? And I'm like, I'm just telling you. And I was kind of butthurt. But then I followed up with him and I sent him a PowerPoint and I said, hey, this is the reason why I was telling you all that. And he's like, you want to come on my podcast? I'm like, yeah. Got on his podcast. He goes, you want to come speak at my event? I'm like, yeah. And that was in 2021. And I've been to every speakeasy that he has since then that I've been able to make it to. Now there's one or two I couldn't do because kiddo responsibilities, my daughter's spring break. I'm like, kiddo first, sorry, Steve. And he was my speaking coach because when I was still at the 9-to-5 job, I wanted to hire someone that wasn't actively speaking. Because to your point, there's a lot of people who teach stuff they've never actually done. Like I know I can name 4 or 5 people who teach speaking courses and they've never been paid to be on stage.
Oh yeah.
But I was at Steve's event. I liked the way he ran it. And then when I was his coach, I went to Secret Knock and he was there again. I said, I'm ready for you to be my coach. Mm-hmm. And then he took me with him to some of the events if I could go. And I got to meet people in the green room and see how he was. And I'm like, this is the guy that I want to be my coach because it's somebody who's actively doing what I want to do. If you hire somebody who was a great coach 10 years ago, the speaking world's different now. Yeah. Or somebody who's never done it, but they're full of theory. Well, they don't know how to actually do it for you. So my advice with coaches, going back to what you said earlier, is find someone who's actually doing what you want to do and find out if they don't have a coaching program, how can you volunteer? How can they mentor you?
Just get around them.
Yeah. For me, that's Steve. I have never been to one of Steve's speakeasy events that I haven't walked away a better person in terms of knowledge or networking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you put the piece of content out not too long ago, kind of picking on his mustache.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What the crap, man?" And I was like, I even wrote, I'm like, do you guys know each other? He's like, and it was one of those things. He made it seem like you didn't, but I mean, it was like, okay, whatever.
Oh, no.
Maybe it was just kind of a ruse or something.
You have to know Steve. He's full of sarcasm, but you're right. Because I got home and my mom's like, so do you need to apologize to Steve? I'm like, for what? And then I was like, no, that's just Steve's humor and everything. So Steve is just a fun guy. I mean, we harass each other all the time. Like we went to one of the other events. I got him an ice mold to put in his drink that should not have been in his drink. Yeah. Just to harass him.
So is that kind of like a WWE moment kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah. So what it was is the girl who posted the video is in Steve's mastermind with me. So I'm in Steve's mastermind right now. And so I was in Philly, I was speaking at an event, and we invited Pam because she lives out there, and she posted the video. So Steve pretended to be shocked. He's like, oh, what's Brian doing? It was all for fun.
That's what I was like wondering that,
Yes.
But he's so good at passing it off.
Because he looks like a mean, angry person to begin with, So especially if you don't know his level of sarcasm and harassment, then yes, it'll look like I said. My mom's like, you need Steve in your life. He's done a lot for you. I'm like, we're good, Mom. We're good.
But that kind of stuff worked. It worked on me. I was like, ooh, what's going on here?
Yes.
Drama.
Yeah, no. Matter of fact, I'll be at Steve's Speakeasy in New York City in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. So he's another one. So people have really impacted my life. Janine. Okay, well, let me go backwards. Bradley, then he introduced me to Janine with his assistant, Jenna. So Jenna helped foster that relationship. Joe Ingram is one of the ones who was in that with me. He's in automotive. He's known as the sales genius. He's the one who had Steve Sims on his podcast and invited me to come on. He's like, hey, Brian, do you want to tell Steve anything about his face? And that's how I met Steve. Steve introduced me to Greg Reed, and it's just grown from there. Yeah. But I'll always remember those first 5 people that did those things for me because they changed my life. Yeah. And so anytime I can spend with Brad, Janine, Joe, I don't know why I'm also forgetting the names I just said.
Yeah, it's the old man fog brain.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I've been trying to get Brad to do is get on a podcast with my business partner.
Yeah.
Because my business partner could certainly address the whole, was his name Jesus topic.
Yeah.
Which I know Brad hyper focuses on.
Yes.
And it's kind of a tertiary topic. It's like, the main topic, dude, is he your savior or isn't he? And you got to know why, not what his name is.
Yeah.
Which is, he makes a big issue out of it and he makes a lot of sense. But I've heard like John can articulate, no, here's what this means. And he can do it better than any pastor who's been trained in it.
Yeah.
And he's just that kind of, you'll find out.
Oh, yeah. You definitely got it. Oh, you'll have to introduce him then.
Yeah. Yeah. He's just an amazing guy. Who just he's very logic oriented with probably about 5% emotion. Yeah. So every now and then it does come out. I'm, between the two of us, more the emotional part of the equation. Yeah. I don't know if it's head and heart. He's certainly the head. I guess I'm more of the heart, but he's got heart too. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting dynamic.
That's awesome.
But man, how do people find and follow you and everything and reach out to you?
So it is subtle skills, but I learned nobody can spell that.
Right.
So just go to decodetheface.com.
Oh, decodetheface.com.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
Oh, yeah. It's because I bought it recently.
Oh, okay.
And I go out, I get on these, like I'll be up at late at night and I'm like, what's another URL I need? So when I came up with the cheat sheet for all the facial features, I bought getthecheatsheet.com.
Right.
Because then I just tell people, hey, you want the cheat sheet? Okay. Go to getthecheatsheet.com.
Dude, that stuff can add up after a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was doing that too. I'm like, I'm going to buy that. And all of a sudden you get, GoDaddy has billed you for $25. And it's like, for a while, it was happening like 4 times a week.
I had to go and get rid of like 50 domains that I bought on the fly. But I did buy one on the way here, Decoding People, just because I do body language. I'm not just the face guy. That's just my niche. But I bought Decoding People because that's what it's really about.
Isn't it funny that after how many, 25 years, we're still doing that?
Yeah.
It's like you'd think it would have morphed by now, evolved. Do you do Linktree at all? Do you set up, or is it just a website?
Website. So I just relaunched a new one. The company that did it for me, they're First Direct 360. They're out of Omaha, and they did it awesome. They just redid my speaker page, everything. It's fantastic. And then we're using a CRM on the background.
So since 2022, have you done a lot better than what you were paid in corporate?
Not yet. No, really? That's because I was well paid in corporate. So it was, the problem with speaking is you have to do a lot for free and then pay your own travel. Then you do for free, travel paid. Then you start getting low months. And then this year it finally started popping. But I made really good money before.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine that, even analyzing speakers that you're with at these conferences, there's something there's somebody that's got to be interested in saying, okay, how did I do? Like I'm asking you now, we're an hour and 7 minutes in.
Yeah.
How am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. What's interesting is because people have been with me from the rise. So I've documented everything.
Yeah.
Being bad on stage, first stages, that people do reach out to me now, like, how do I get on stages? What can I do? How can I hire you for a few hours? And then what's interesting is now that corporations have had me, the problem when I got fired in 2022 was November. And I said, I'm going to take the entire month of December off. I've worked for 21 and a half years for the same company. I'm going to take some time. January is the worst time to try and become a speaker.
Yeah.
Right. Because everybody's already done their budget for that whole year.
Right.
So I had to wait for gigs to fall in my lap. And so I've already gotten 3 gigs that I'm locked in for 2025 already.
Okay.
So you just have to get ahead of them.
Virtual training courses, anything like that?
I do. I've got a Lightspeed platform course. I just launched coaching because when you give people the book, the flashcards of the course, they may watch it. Yeah. But when people can ask questions, that's really how they learn. And I plan to throw an in-person event too, because I love being in the room, teaching people, bringing up volunteers. Like that's one of the things I won't be able to do tomorrow is I love to bring up volunteers at the end because why? It lets you see what can be done, but it also helps reinforce what the audience has already learned. Because I'll say, what do you see in their eyebrows? Are they high or are they low? What shape are they? And when the audience starts chiming in, I'm like, well, then how would you talk to them? And then they start answering. That's when they're like, this stuff works.
Right.
And it changes lives.
What do I need to correct? What do I need to stop doing or start doing?
I don't see anything that you've done. I mean,
you got to establish like a baseline and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so I watch like you give great eye contact when you're talking to me, even though you're running the boards and everything else. I didn't even notice that you were doing anything like that. I even get myself paranoid. If you notice, when we started, my drinks were here, and I'm like, I've got a barrier in between. So I was slowly over the podcast, moving them out of the way.
That's hilarious.
Because that's what you want to do is you want to have an open line of communication with people. And I realized when I was drinking my Coke, so you didn't notice it, but I was slowly moving everything to this side to get our barriers out of the way.
Nice. There's actually, it's funny you mentioned eye contact. I know a guy he's a regional director and owner of the local franchise of B&I here. Mm-hmm. And, I think I've mentioned this to him before, and I'm talking about you, pal. He makes unbreaking eye contact. And it's like you feel like he's just drilling through the back of your head. And it's like you're not the same. You make very good eye contact as well. But I don't feel like I've got holes coming through the back of my head when you do it. So kudos.
Have you talked to Brian Galke?
Yes. Yeah, he's a client. I do his podcast as well.
Yeah. Okay. So sometimes when you talk to him and he's interested in what you're saying and he's staring, I'm like, what? So yes. Yeah.
I got to get, I know Brian going on, I think it's 2018 or 2019. I met him. Maybe it was 2020. So I was at the forefront of his podcast, helping him get established and all that stuff. Awesome. Did his intro, redid his intro. Yeah. But he was always just a very intensely set on, I'm going to do what I need to do to become successful.
Right.
I still think he needs to find out all these guys that are out there doing this, they have to find out what is their thing, what's their big idea.
Yeah.
And right now he's saying it's just finding your competitive edge. I'm like, but that's a topic.
Right.
That's, who are you, man?
Yeah.
And if he's hearing this and listening to it, I mean, it's not a knock.
Exactly.
It's just one of those things I'm like, buddy, it's just something I notice,
I don't know when he sleeps. I mean, all I see is him working out, soccer, kids, family, traveling, speaking, and he's got a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
I really don't know how he does it all. It's impressive.
Well, I mean, I've got 5 full-time jobs. So
do you really?
Yeah. I always joke about that.
Yeah.
With marketing for our companies here, we've got a garage door company now. Mm-hmm. We got so many things going on. We're buying a building. We bought land. We want to build a building. So it's just a lot of stuff. But it's like, it's what you got to do.
Exactly.
So, well, there you go. You can find and follow him there at decodetheface.com. It's already pointed to your website.
Yep. Already
and
pointed.
If you're a savvy speller, subtleskills.com. That is SUBTLE. It's not SUTTLE or SUTTEL or anything like that. You would imagine you'd see on Facebook these days. And it gives you an indication as a country
I thought when
we
I
are.
bought it, I'm like, I'm genius. That's the best name ever. But nobody can spell it.
You could probably actually do this for podcasters like that have videos.
Yeah.
I'm doing I'm producing a podcast right now called Try That in a Small Town Podcast.
Yeah.
It's with the songwriters that wrote the Jason Aldean hit.
Right.
They've been very successful so far, but they're figuring out how to be radio hosts essentially right now. They're at episode 21 or 22. Mm-hmm. And they're still trying to figure out how to dynamically, hey, you're on, what's the thing?
Yeah.
There's something there too.
There is.
Watching body language and things of that nature.
It is.
So
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Cool, man. Well, there you go. Again, check him out, decodetheface.com, Brian Galke. And also check us out at MMTBP.com. Find us, follow us, subscribe, rate, share. Always looking for good ratings. If you're on Facebook and you're watching this, or YouTube or anything, give us a 4 or 5 star review. If anything less, let us know how we can better it. Of course, we've got the link at the website as well. If you want to be a guest, please make sure you live in the Middle Tennessee area, because I'll be getting people from like Wyoming saying, "Hey, I love your podcast. Would love to be on." And you find out they're from like Hawaii. It's like, okay, whatever. MMTBP.com. Brian, pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.